Hello, I am Katie Wendelin and I am the Clinical Director of Youth Services at Access Counseling. I've been in the field for over 6 years and counseling is my passion. I find so much joy in helping my clients make changes in their lives so that they can live their best life. I'm very excited to talk with you today about responsible decision making through the lens of social emotional learning. The decisions that we make change our lives. We are truly one decision away from a totally different life. My hope is that this presentation will help you feel more comfortable teaching our students how to make healthy and responsible decisions so that they can have successful and wonderful lives. What is responsible decision making? Responsible decision making is the ability to make constructive choices about personal behavior and social interactions. These decisions are based on ethical standards, safety concerns, and social norms. It is also necessary to evaluate and reflect on our decisions, including examining consequences and how our decisions impact others. This is an important skill for our students because they need to make decisions throughout their life. We make decisions all day long. What are we going to eat? Should I hit the snooze button? What should I do if someone hurts me? Responsible decision making is challenging, even for adults, so it is important that we take the time to teach this skill to our students. All of our students are unique. It is important to think about your student as a whole. They have many roles: son or daughter, brother or sister, friend and student. Students may have experienced things in their lives that you have never experienced before. It could be a death of a parent, living in poverty, experiencing sexual, physical, or emotional abuse, being neglected, or being in foster care. Many of our students live in families that are blended, or their grandparents or another relative is taking care of them. All of our students have a unique story. I encourage you to get to know your student's story. It is important to remember that our students may have different ethical standards, social norms, or safety concerns that we do. Perhaps a student is permitted to run around at home and not sit still because his or her parent has other more pressing priorities. Perhaps a student does not see drug or alcohol use as a dangerous problem because his or her family uses drugs or alcohol. It is also possible that your student only feels safe in your classroom because their home environment is chaotic. It's important to not assume you know everything about your student. Ask them questions about how they are doing and what they are experiencing. A lot of times you are the only one who will ask, and that will make all the difference. Decision making is empowering. Students have the ability to make choices for themselves. They gain autonomy and independence. It can boost self-esteem and self-efficacy. If you ask your students about making decisions, a lot of them will tell you that their parents, grandparents, teachers, and other authority figures make decisions for them. While that is the case sometimes, it is important to empower students to make their own choices. Feeling not good enough or like you can't do anything right is a struggle for a lot of students. In my experience as a youth counselor, I find that a lot of my clients are never told they are doing a good job. Parents don't see the good things they do or the good choices they make because they focus on the negative choices they have made. This is hard and often leads to low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, and other mental health disorders. You have the ability to help these students realize that they do not need approval from others to feel good about themselves. One way to do this is by encouraging students to make their own responsible decisions, feel empowered, and build self-efficacy. I'd like to share with you a video put together by the Ohio Department of Education about responsible decision making. I hope you enjoy it. Now that we have an overview of responsible decision making and why it's important, let's look at the SEL standards put out by the Ohio Department of Education. First, students will develop, implement, and model effective decision and critical thinking skills. Identifying problems and solutions is the first step. It is important to assist students in realizing there are multiple perspectives to a problem and a solution. Next, students will identify potential outcomes to make constructive decisions. What barriers are there to make a decision? Who can help you make a decision? How can adults help you make decisions? How can you tell which adults are reliable sources for help? Have you experienced this before? If so, what happened? Then students will consider the ethical and social impact of decisions. Students should ask themselves, how does my decision affect me, my classmates, my teacher, my family, my school, my community? Looking at the big picture and understanding the ripple effect is the goal. Recognizing safe practices is key here as well. Help students ask themselves, is this a safe choice? Last, students will explore and approach new situations with an open mind and curiosity. While recognizing that some outcomes are not certain or comfortable, new opportunities can have new outcomes. What do you do when you're faced with something unfamiliar? How do you feel physically and emotionally when you experience something unfamiliar? We need to encourage students to learn and grow and be uncomfortable, try new things, and be resilient to change. These are the key components for responsible decision making: identifying problems, analyzing situations, solving problems, evaluating, reflecting, and ethical responsibility. We will now take a look at each component more closely. It is essential to teach our students to stop, think, then act. First, students need to stop and identify the problem. The first step in making the right decision is recognizing the problem or the opportunity and deciding to address it. Then students need to think about the situation. This is the time to gather information and do research so that your decision is based on facts and data. What do you need to know in order to make the right decision? Who can you ask for help? This step helps students eliminate the possibility of making rash decisions that can often lead them into negative consequences. What are the social and emotional consequences? It is important to make a decision knowing the risks. Encourage reflection on past experiences to determine how to proceed in this decision. Next, students act. Students will create a plan for implementation and take action. After the decision has been made, there's more work to do. A lot of times, students don't move into these next steps, so it is important to encourage and teach students how to fully complete the decision-making process. Students need to evaluate their decision. Did their actions solve the problem? Reflection is key to learning this skill. Encourage students to reflect on their choice. Why did you choose that? Was it the best choice? Would something else have been better? If you knew what you know now, would you have made the same decision? This is the hindsight is 20/20 part of decision making. Finally, students need to examine how their decision and choice has affected themselves and the world around them. Did their decision have consequences, positive and negative? How did their decision affect their classmates, teacher, school, family, town, world? How do I repair damage? What does an apology look like? Piaget's theory of cognitive development can provide insight to teachers and parents about what is developmentally appropriate with regards to abstract thinking and perspective taking. In the pre-operational stage, ages 2 to 7, children often have difficulty seeing things and concepts from other perspectives. In the concrete operational stage, ages 7 to 11, children can begin to think logically. In the formal operational stage, ages 11 plus, children have developed the ability to think logically and abstractly. It's important to remember that not all of your students will be typical, and recognizing delays will enhance your ability to teach this skill. Here is an example of what a responsible decision-making process may look like for a student. Identify the problem. Matthew, another classmate, called me stupid and it hurt my feelings. Analyzing the situation. What am I going to do? 3 options come to mind. I can tell the teacher, I can hit Matthew, or I can do nothing and move on. If I tell the teacher, Matthew might get mad at me and call me stupid again, and I wouldn't like that. The teacher might discipline Matthew, and he learns he should talk nicely to me. If I hit Matthew, I'll hurt him just as much as he hurt me. I hit my brother sometimes when he is mean to me and he stops. When I hit my brother, my mom yells at me sometimes. If I do nothing, maybe Matthew won't do it again. I can act strong and pretend like it doesn't bother me, but it did bother me. Solving the problem. I'm going to tell the teacher. Evaluating. Did this solve my problem? When I told the teacher, Matthew got in trouble and apologized to me. He promised me he wouldn't do it again. I feel better. This solved my problem. Reflect. I chose to tell the teacher because I needed help from an adult. I think this was the best choice. If this happens again, I know that telling a teacher would work. Ethical considerations. Telling the teacher positively impacted me because now Matthew is nice to me. Matthew learned that calling people names is wrong, and maybe he won't call another person a name. I helped make my classroom a safer place. I hope that this overview of responsible decision-making was helpful. Now I would like to provide you with ideas for interventions that you can use in the classroom to facilitate the decision-making process. Here are 3 interventions teachers can use with elementary age students. Identifying choices and consequences worksheet, apology puzzle, and can you save Fred? This is a worksheet in which students can identify choices and consequences. Teachers have the flexibility to identify problems that they see in the classroom. Students will fill in the blank with their thoughts and have the opportunity to develop one on their own. Have students complete the worksheet individually. Encourage students to use their critical thinking skills to identify consequences. Students should stop and think about the problem. Sharing with the class their answers can help students develop ideas on a variety of consequences they may not have thought of themselves. This activity helps students learn how to apologize. Sometimes after students make choices, they hurt others, intentionally or unintentionally. Part of the decision-making process is to assess for damage and identify ways to repair relationships. This activity helps students identify all the parts of an apology. The words on the puzzle pieces can be written before given to the student, or students can create their own apologies. Teaching children the 4 steps to an effective apology is the goal of this intervention. The 4 steps include saying they are sorry for something they did, explaining why it was wrong, telling the person they hurt that they will do different in the future, and then asking if there is something they can do to make the situation better. You can even go a step further and have children work together and role play. They can apologize to other students and prepare themselves for a wide variety of reactions to apologies. This activity is called Can You Save Fred? You will need to have a few supplies for this activity, including gummy worms, gummy lifesavers, clear plastic cups, paper clips, and a tray or paper plate. You will set up each station like shown in the picture and describe to the students that Fred was on his boat one day on the lake and didn't have his life jacket on and the boat flipped over. Have students work in small groups to accomplish the following. Turn the boat right side up, get Fred back in his boat, and put Fred's life jacket back on. Students can only touch the paper clips and Fred cannot fall into the lake and he cannot be injured by spearing him with the paper clip. This activity can be really fun and will help students make decisions as a team. Remind your students to stop, think, and act. Afterwards, you can facilitate discussions, evaluating and reflecting on their decisions. This activity can also be used to discuss team roles and leadership. The following interventions are best suited for middle school age students: making a decision worksheet, would you rather, and the Oreo peer pressure activity. This worksheet will help students to learn to make a responsible decision. I would suggest having students brainstorm in a large classroom discussion about the decisions they need to make in their life, big or small. Then allow students to complete their worksheets individually and then share with the class. Afterwards, teachers can ask students about their experiences, including what was the hardest step in the process? How did they use the stop, think, act model? How did your past experiences help shape the decision-making process? I'm sure most of you have played the game Would You Rather. This activity can be rolled out in many ways, but here are 2 ideas. You could have a Would You Rather bulletin board in your classroom and have students pick a side at the start of each week. Another idea is you could pose a question to the class and then have them go to either sides of the classroom when they make their choice. Some examples of Would You Rather questions could be, would you rather never have homework or stay at school until 5 p.m.? Would you rather have one really great best friend or 10 acquaintances? Would you rather work in a job with a boss or be your own boss? You can ask questions to help them start thinking about the here and now and also their future. Afterwards, you can have a discussion about how they came to their decision, the ethical and social impact of their choices, positive and negative consequences, and discuss if hearing other people's opinions made them change their mind. This is the Oreo peer pressure activity. You will need at least 1 Oreo, but I'm sure your class will love you if at the end everyone gets an Oreo. Peer pressure is one of the biggest challenges for middle school age students. Developmentally, they are trying to figure out who they are and how they fit in. Sometimes a simple decision to give into peer pressure can have tremendous consequences. You can start with a discussion about what peer pressure is and what it is not to get everyone on the same page. Next, have students gather around and watch the demonstration. First, press on the Oreo hard enough that the cream squeezes out, but the cookie does not break. This is peer pressure. You, as the Oreo, feel the pressure to do something. Have students identify what types of peer pressure they have experienced. Then press as hard as you can so that the cookie breaks. This is giving in to peer pressure. It causes damage. It's hard to put the Oreo back together, but the cream helps. This reminds students that if they make an unhealthy decision, they can recover. You can further the discussion and ask students if they make decisions to give in to peer pressure, how they can repair the damage to themselves, to classmates, to family. Focus on the social and ethical impact. How can they stop, think, and act? Finally, I will discuss interventions for responsible decision-making for high school age students. Debate, peer pressure worksheet, and connecting values to decision-making. Who doesn't love a debate? This activity fosters all the components of responsible decision-making. Teachers can split their class into 2 groups, and the groups will need to take opposing stances on a topic of your choice. Some examples of debate topics could be, should we ban homework? Is college essential? For those brave teachers out there, you could pose the questions of, should marijuana be legalized for recreational use? Or do drug addicts need help or punishment? Allow students to have time to gather information, do research, talk with their peers. Encourage them to think of both positive and negative consequences. What is the social and ethical impact? Since students were assigned a position, ask them if they agree with their position after hearing the opposing side's argument. This is a peer pressure worksheet. Like I explained before, peer pressure is a huge obstacle for teenagers. High schoolers are constantly faced with peer pressure. They are faced with these decisions daily, so it is important to help students make responsible and healthy decisions about their lives and futures. It's also important to recognize that peer pressure to do positive and healthy things also occur. Have students complete this worksheet about a scenario that they have experienced or could experience in the future. Some examples could be skipping class, being offered drugs or alcohol, or bullying someone. Have a discussion with your students about the consequences of their decision to say yes or to say no. You can solicit feedback from other students. Finally, here's an activity in which students will identify their core values and connect them to the decision-making process. Pass out a handout with the core values listed on it, like the one shown here. Have students highlight or circle their top 10 core values. Then pose scenarios of decisions they may need to make. Ask students, how does my decision fit in with my values? Is it against my values? What about the values of my classroom, my school, my family? This allows students to practice analyzing the situation and think of the ethical impact of their decisions. Thank you so much for watching my presentation on responsible decision making. If you have any questions or comments, you can always contact me at kdevlin@acscounseling.com. Thank you.